Sing. Sintsink Correctional Facility, formerly Ossining Correctional Facility, is a maximum security prison operated by the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision in the village of Ossining, New York. It is about 30 miles 48 km north of New York City on the east bank of the Hudson River. Sing Sing holds about 1,700 prisoners and housed the execution chamber for the state of New York until the abolition of capital punishment in New York in 2004. The name Sing Sing was derived from the Sintsink Indian tribe from whom the land was purchased in 1685 and was formerly also the name of the village. In 1970, the name of the prison was changed to the Ossining Correctional Facility, but it reverted to its original name in 1985. There are plans to convert the original 1825 cell block into a period museum. The prison property is bisected by the Metro-North Railroad's four-track Hudson Line. History. Early years. Sing Sing was the fifth prison constructed by New York state authorities. In 1824, the New York legislature gave Elam Linds, warden of Osborne Prison and a former United States Army captain, the task of constructing a new, more modern prison. Linds spent months researching possible locations for the prison, considering Staten Island, the Bronx, and Silver Mine Farm, an area in the town of Mount Pleasant on the banks of the Hudson River. By May, Linds had decided to build a prison on Mount Pleasant, near and thus named after a small village in Westchester County named Sing Sing, whose name came from the Wappinger Native American words sink sink, which translates to stone upon stone. In March of 1825, the legislature appropriated $20,100 to purchase the 130-acre 0.53 km2 site, and the project received the official stamp of approval. Linds selected 100 inmates from the Osborne prison for transfer. On their arrival on May 14, the site was without a place to receive them or a wall to enclose them. Temporary barracks, a cookhouse, carpenter and blacksmith's shops were rushed to completion. When it was opened in 1826, it was considered a model prison because it turned a profit for the state. By October 1828, Sing Sing was completed. Linds employed the Osborne system, which imposed absolute silence on the prisoners. The system was enforced by whipping and other punishments. It was John Lucky, the prison chaplain around 1843, who held the principal keeper of Sing Sing, Elam Linds, accountable to New York Governor William H. Seward and to President of the Board of Inspectors, John Edmonds, to have Linds removed. Chaplain Lucky proceeded to create a great religious library. His purpose was to teach correct moral principles. His religious library was challenged in 1844 when John Edmonds placed Eliza Farnham in charge of the women's ward at Sing Sing. In 1844, the New York Prison Association was inaugurated to monitor state prison administration. The NY Prison Association was made up of reformers interested in the rehabilitation and humane treatment of prisoners. Farnham was able to obtain the job largely on the recommendation of these reformers. Farnham overturned the strictly silent practice in prison and introduced social engagement to shift concern more toward the future instead of dwelling on the criminal past. She included novels by Charles Dickens in Chaplain Lucky's religious library, novels the chaplain did not approve. This was the first documented expansion of the prison library to include moral teachings from secular literature. Since 1900, Thomas Mott Osborne's tenure as warden of Sing Sing was brief but dramatic. Osborne arrived in 1914 with a reputation as a radical prison reformer. His report of a week-long incognito stay inside New York's Osborne prison indicted traditional prison administration in merciless detail. Prisoners who had bribed officers and intimidated other inmates lost their privileges under Osborne's regime. One of them conspired with powerful political allies to destroy Osborne's reputation, even succeeding in getting him indicted for a variety of crimes and maladministration. After Osborne triumphed in court, His return to Sing Sing was a cause for wild celebration by the inmates. Another notable warden was Louis Laws. He was offered the position of warden in 1919, accepted in January 1920, and remained for 21 years as Sing Sing's warden. While warden, Laws brought about reforms and turned what was described as an old hellhole into a modern prison with sports teams, educational programs, new methods of discipline, and more. Several new buildings were constructed during the years Laws was warden. Laws retired in 1941 and died 6 years later. In 1943, the old cell block was closed and the metal bars and doors were donated to the war effort. In 1989, the institution was accredited for the first time by the American Correctional Association, which established a set of national standards by which it judged every correctional facility. As of 2019, Sing Sing houses approximately 1,500 inmates, employs about 900 people, and has hosted over 5,000 visitors per month. The original 1825 cell block is no longer used, and in 2002 plans were announced to turn it into a museum. In April 2011, there were talks of closing the prison to take advantage of its valuable real estate. Executions. In total, 614 men and women, including 4 inmates under federal death sentences, were executed by electric chair at Sing Sing until the abolition of the death penalty in 1972. After a series of escapes from death row, a new death house was built in 1920 and began executions in 1922. High-profile executions in Sing Sing's electric chair, nicknamed Old Sparky, include Julius and Ethel Rosenberg on June 19, 1953, for espionage for the Soviet Union on nuclear weapon research, and Gerhard Puff on August 12, 1954, for the murder of an FBI agent. The last person executed in New York State was Eddie Lee Mays for murder on August 15, 1963. In 1972, the United States Supreme Court ruled in Furman v. Georgia that the death penalty was unconstitutional if its application was inconsistent and arbitrary. This led to a temporary de facto nationwide moratorium. Executions resumed in other states in 1977, but the electric chair at Sing Sing still remained. In the early 1970s, the electric chair was moved to Green Haven Correctional Facility in working condition, but was never used again. Educational programs. In 1996, Catherine Vawkins founded Rehabilitation Through the Arts RTA at Sing Sing. RTA works in collaboration with theater professionals to provide prisoners with a curriculum of year-round theater-related workshops. The RTA program has put on a number of plays at Sing Sing open to prisoners and community guests. The program has shown that the use of dramatic techniques leads to significant improvements in the cognitive behavior of the program's participants inside prison and a reduction in recidivism once paroled. The impact of RTA on social and institutional behavior was formally evaluated by John Jay College for Criminal Justice in collaboration with the NY State Department of Corrections. Led by Dr. Lorraine Mahler, professor of speech and drama at John Jay, the study found that RTA had a positive impact on notable RTA prisoner Pavel Stanimirovic, who first participated in the program, showing that the longer the inmate was in the program, the fewer violations he committed. The RTA program currently operates at 5 other New York State prisons. The organization, Hudson Link for Higher Education in Prison, provides college courses to incarcerated people to help reduce recidivism and poverty and strengthen families and communities. In 1998, as part of the Get Tough on Crime campaign, state and federal funding for college programs inside prison was stopped. Understanding the positive effects of education in the transformation and rehabilitation of incarcerated people, inmates at Sing Sing Correctional Facility reached out to religious and academic volunteers to develop a college degree granting program. Under and Reisner, Hudson Link for Higher Education in Prison was founded to restore college education at Sing Sing through private funding. Football team. In 1931, new prison reforms gave Sing Sing State Penitentiary prisoners permission to partake in recreation opportunities. The baseball and football teams and the vaudeville presentations and concerts were funded through revenue from paid attendance. Tim Mara, the owner of the New York Giants, sponsored the Sing Sing Black Sheep, Sing Sing's football team. Mara provided equipment and uniforms and players to tutor them in fundamentals. He helped coach them the first season. Known as the Black Sheep, they were also sometimes called the Zebras. All games were home games, played at Laws Stadium, named for Warden Louis E. Laws. In 1935, the starting quarterback and two other starters escaped the morning before a game. Alabama Pitts was their starting quarterback and star for the first 4 seasons, but then finished his sentence. Upon release, Alabama Pitts played for the Philadelphia Eagles in 1935. In 1932, graduate Jumbo Morano was signed by the Giants and played for the Patterson Nighthawks of the Eastern Football League. In 1934, State Commissioner of Correction Walter N. Thayer banned the advertising of activities at the prison, including football games. On November 19, 1936, a new rule banned ticket sales. No revenues would be derived from show and sports event ticketing. These funds had been paying for disbursements to prisoners' families, especially the kin of those executed, and for equipment and coaches' salaries. With this new edict, the season ended and prisoners were no longer allowed to play football outside Sing Sing. Museum. Plans to turn a portion of Sing Sing into a museum date back to 2002, when local officials sought to turn the old powerhouse into the museum linked by a tunnel to a retired cell block at a cost of $5 million. In 2007, the village of Ossining applied for $12.05 million in federal money for the project, at the time expected to cost $14 million. The proposed museum would display the Sing Sing story as it unfolded over time. Contribution to American English. Can English, American English, can English, can English, can English, can English, can English, can English, English, and English. The expression up the river to describe someone in prison or heading to prison derives from the practice of sentencing people convicted in New York City to serve their terms in Sing Sing, which is located up the Hudson River from the city. The slang expression dates from 1891. Gallery. Notable inmates. Frank Avendando, New York City contract killer, member of infamous Murder, Inc. gang. Georgia Poe, 19th century pickpocket and con artist. Charles Becker, NYPD lieutenant convicted for the murder of Herman Rosenthal and executed at Sing Sing on July 30, 1915. Maria Barbella, the second woman sentenced to death by electric chair. Later overruled and Barbella was freed. Louis Buchalter, American mobster and head of Murder, Inc., who served 18 months at Sing Sing on a grand larceny conviction. On January 22, 1920, Buchalter returned to Sing Sing on a 30-month sentence for attempted burglary. He was released on March 16, 1922. Charles Chapman, editor of New York Evening World, popularly known as the Roseman of Sing Sing. Albert Fish, early 20th century American serial killer, child rapist, and cannibal, executed in 1936. Paul Jadel, formerly the longest-serving prison inmate in the United States, who served 68 years and 296 days in various New York state prisons. Mary Jones, a 19th century transgender prostitute, who was a center of media attention for coming to court wearing feminine attire. George C. Parker, infamous con man known for selling the Brooklyn Bridge, Lynn Bridge. Tony Sirico, actor known for his role as Paulie Galtieri on the critically acclaimed television series The Sopranos, convicted of felony weapons possession, and served 20 months of his 4-year sentence at Sing Sing. Willie Sutton, career criminal who escaped December 11, 1932, Ferdinand Ward, Gilded Age swindler who ran a New York City investment firm with Ulysses S. Grant, Jr., son of former President of the United States Ulysses S. Grant, revealed to be a Ponzi scheme that bankrupted the Grant family in 1884. Raymond Fernandez and Martha Beck, so-called Lonely Heart Killers, both executed on the electric chair at Sing Sing in 1951. Monk Eastman, New York gangster and leader of the Eastman Gang, sentenced to 10 years at Sing Sing in 1904. Martin Goldstein, American mobster and hitman for murder, Inc., executed on the electric chair at Sing Sing in 1941. 41. Fritz Julius Kuhn, German former leader of the German-American Bund, incarcerated at Sing Sing various times between 1939–45 and deported to Germany. James Larkin, political activist and union leader, sentenced to 5 to 10 years in Sing Sing prison for criminal anarchy in 1919. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, executed at Sing Sing in 1953 for conspiring to pass secrets of the American atomic bomb project to the Soviet Union during World War II. Richard Whitney served a sentence for embezzlement at Sing Sing from 1938 until 1941. Joseph Valachi, member of the American Mafia, served his first prison sentence of approximately 1 year at Sing Sing before he was 20 years old.